Hey guys, Tyler here. Star Trek has, for more than half a century, filled a major niche in popular culture, that of optimistic sci-fi storytelling. Obviously, Star Trek is not the only franchise that offers this kind of perspective, but undeniably, it is the most prominent. Of course, Trek has come in different flavors over the years. For instance, the original series was a projection of 1960s space race fever, and Deep Space Nine showed a darker side of Star Trek, asking tough questions about what it takes to preserve utopia. But among the new Star Trek shows, Lower Decks is arguably the most committed to carrying on Trek's optimistic vision. A more comedic take on the Next Generation era Starfleet, Lower Decks portrays what it's like to navigate mundane tasks in a post-materialist world. And no character embodies this optimism as much as Ensign Divana Tendi. In this video, I invite you to indulge me as I explain why Tendi may be one of the most important Star Trek characters in decades. Let's get started. Divana Tendi is a female Orion junior science officer in Starfleet during the 2380s. She was once a pirate known by the pseudonym Mistress of the Winter Constellations, and her family was part of the Orion Syndicate. While Tendi acquired many useful skills, such as using an Orion multi-key and bypassing failsafes, she was eager to leave this life of piracy. In doing so, she earned the ire of the Syndicate. She decided to join Starfleet after visiting a recruitment booth, attending the Academy, and graduating as a member of the Sciences Division. As a non-Federation citizen, Tendi would have only been eligible for the Academy preparatory exam if she were sponsored by a command-level officer who had written a letter of recommendation on her behalf. Tendi's admission to the Academy was very difficult for her, as pre-existing stigmas about Orions caused many to see her as little more than a thief. This made Tendi quite sensitive and prone to frustration whenever anyone associated her with stereotypes about Orions. But this made her incredibly eager to prove herself.
The truth is, a lot of Orions are capitalist, hyper-libertarian gangster pirates, just not this one.
She was so focused on her studies, in fact, that she never left San Francisco during her academy years. As we see in the first episode of Lower Decks, Second Contact, upon arriving at the USS Cerritos in 2380, Tendi is assigned as a medic under Nurse Westlake. She meets Brad Boimler, Beckett Mariner, and Sam Rutherford. Throughout the series, we see that Tendi takes an interest in just about any task that she is given. She is slow to anger, incredibly patient, and rarely lets others affect her positive attitude. She also values her friends' happiness over her own, though this does indirectly make her hesitant to talk much about herself. In fact, Dr. T'Ana notes that while Tendi is very good at her duties in sickbay, she's not very assertive, often letting crewmates walk all over her. T'Ana even assigns her small personal errands. So she's kind of part of the problem then. But while Tendi initially finds T'Ana intimidating, when Tendi starts to show more confidence, T'Ana commends her for it. This eventually leads T'Ana to determine that Tendi is not reaching her full potential, and she recommends Tendi be transferred from medical to senior science officer training. Tendi finds joy in rather tedious tasks like cataloging, even taking the time to hand edit the DNA sequence of an artificially created dog she calls the dog. In the season 1 finale, No Small Parts, after Rutherford sustains an injury that damages his cybernetic implant, Tendi stays by his side, often reading tech manuals to him while he is unconscious. When Rutherford wakes up, he does not remember who Tendi is, but Tendi views this as a grand opportunity for the two to become best friends all over again. Okay, I'm not going to rehash every single detail we've learned about this character throughout Lower Decks, but at this point you may still be wondering, what the heck is the point of this video? Well, it's important to consider how and why Tendi was created. Lower Decks creator Mike McMahon is a longtime Star Trek fan. Having written for shows like Rick and Morty, McMahon also wrote the Short Treks episode The Escape Artist. He is also the creator of the @TNG_S8 Twitter account, which for years posted satirical episode outlines for a fictitious 8th season of TNG. These outlines eventually led to the commissioning of a reference book called Star Trek The Next Generation: Warped, which turned these outlines into a full-fledged episode guide. One of the episodes, seemingly a spiritual successor to the real Season 7 episode Lower Decks, focuses on low-ranking Enterprise crew members. In 2018, McMahon was brought in by executives at Secret Hideout to pitch an animated Star Trek series. Eventually, the show was picked up by CBS All Access, now Paramount Plus, becoming the first animated Trek show since the animated series, which ran from 1973 to 1974. In an August 2020 interview, McMahon described all 4 leads in Lower Decks as a combination of other Trek characters, parts of himself, and people he knew in real life. Tendi was born out of a suggestion by Secret Hideout that the series' first episode feature a character's first day on the Cerritos. From there, McMahon began to think of Tendi as a character who is all silver lining, relating to how he would act on a starship. She was further described as that voice of enthusiasm, who just wants to know everything and wants to consume all things about the ship and learn and grow, who we will also watch grow throughout the series. Indeed, Tendi, the first Orion Starfleet officer shown in the Prime timeline, stands out even among the other characters in Lower Decks. And understandably, she is many people's favorite character from the show. At the risk of stating the obvious to some people while perhaps surprising others, I think I know exactly why Tendi is so popular. Well, one reason at least. We all have our unique take on the situation. Before we go any further, I do want to point out that according to my analytics, over 3/4 of the people who watch these videos are not subscribed. That has got to change. If you're enjoying this video and you want to see more like it, hit that subscribe button so you won't miss my future uploads. Now, back to the video. From everything that I have discussed so far, it should be clear that Tendi is an avatar. No, not that kind of avatar. And no, not that kind of avatar either. No, I mean avatar as in the 2020s, she embodies the spirit of Star Trek. According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, definition 3B of avatar is an embodiment as of a concept or philosophy, often in a person. Devana Tendi's enthusiasm and, importantly, her optimism are key aspects of her character. And today, just as in the past, that optimism is, in my opinion, crucial for Star Trek to be Star Trek. Many people over the years have stated that Star Trek's optimistic vision of the future, particularly its optimistic vision for humanity, is one of the biggest appeals of the franchise. And again, it's been this way since its inception. At the beginning of this video, I alluded to how the original series was an outgrowth of 1960s futurism and reflected the political zeitgeist at the time. The Cold War was in full swing, which led to many stories depicting the Klingons as stand-ins for the Soviet Union, and there were plenty of allegories for Vietnam and Nazi Germany. But most noteworthy of all is that the main bridge crew included a black woman, a man of Japanese descent, and a Russian man. And all of these people of different backgrounds were working together in deep space on a mission of scientific exploration. For the 60s, this was revolutionary. Fast forward a little bit, and 1990s Star Trek embodies many of the hopes and anxieties of the post-Cold War period. In the United States, The 1990s saw a resurgence in what many today refer to as the culture wars, as the conservative movement shifted their attention from anti-communism abroad to domestic social issues like feminism and LGBT rights. At the same time, issues like climate change and income inequality were becoming more evident, though they didn't have the same prominence in public discourse that they do even today. But many of Star Trek's writers were keenly aware of these trends. And this is one reason we got episodes like TNG's Force of Nature, a clear allegory for humanity's dependence on oil, DS9's Past Tense, which tackles issues like racism and homelessness, In the Hands of the Prophets, which highlights tensions between religious and secular teachings in schools, and Rejoined, which features Trek's first same-sex kiss, among other episodes. To many, the Enterprise era is basically Trek's version of the War on Terror. I go into more detail about how US foreign policy has influenced Star Trek in an older video of mine that did not get a lot of views, which you should check out. Link in the description. The Kelvin timeline movies are also their own beast, though I do like how they make the Star Trek universe feel more industrial and lived in. And in Discovery, Michael Burnham has often served as the voice of reason in a room full of warhawks and other pessimists. But the inconsistent writing of her character, from protagonist and narrator in the early seasons to just merely part of the ensemble later on, make it difficult for me to deem her Star Trek's current avatar. Devana Tendi, on the other hand, is enthusiastic and optimistic from the get-go. Admittedly, she's also part of Lower Decks' ensemble, and if Lower Decks does have any one main character, it's probably Beckett Mariner. She's the captain's daughter, and she's also the most prominent face in most of Lower Decks' marketing. But Mariner's also a cynic. Her function is to point out the flaws that she perceives in how Starfleet operates, though she's definitely matured. She's not as reckless as she used to be. And this isn't to say that many of her critiques of Starfleet don't ring true. That's part of the anti-establishment fervor that permeates the modern day. But in my opinion, Tendi is Star Trek. She's a member of an iconic species first introduced in TOS. She's a science officer. Her work ethic is to be admired. She's overcome lots of trauma. Her positive attitude is reinforced through her interactions with other people. And while she, like all of us, can be emotional, she ultimately channels that passionate frustration towards bettering herself and her community. That is the ideal of Star Trek. In a future where resources are more abundant and technology allows us to accomplish incredible feats, we continue to atone for our past while looking forward to the future. That's what Q's Trial of Humanity was about, is about. The trial never ends. And while we do occasionally stumble, we try to learn from our mistakes and, in the process, just frankly have fun doing science. In a world plagued with hate, inequality, pessimism, and science denialism, we honestly need a show like Lower Decks. I've criticized aspects of the writing before, particularly the occasional forced referential humor and the rapid cartoon pacing. It kind of is Star Trek's Rick and Morty, but we still need it. In many ways, tonally, it's the inverse of Rick and Morty, which these days is basically just nihilism the show. Lower Decks is, in many ways, the quintessential Star Trek of the 2020s, because it reinforces one of the original points of the franchise: to face new, difficult situations with curiosity and thoughtfulness. While dystopian sci-fi definitely has its place, often serving as a poignant warning about troubling trajectories in our society, utopian sci-fi is, in my opinion, just as important. We need optimistic sci-fi to show us how we could achieve a more hopeful future. Because without hope, what else have we got? So I think it would be an understatement to say that I went on a couple tangents in this video. Even the writing of this script simply started out as a pure character analysis of Tendi, but I found it quite prudent to explore the character's real-life origins. And in examining the crucial importance of Star Trek's Optimism, one can't help but appreciate the socio-political context that each installment was written in. Either way, I hope you've been thoroughly entertained and informed by this video. Before I go, one more thing. I say that Tendi is the avatar of Star Trek in the 2020s, but perhaps there's more than one. Is Michael Burnham an avatar as well, after all? In fact, isn't Jean-Luc Picard an even more iconic avatar? Furthermore, who are the avatars of the other classic Star Trek shows? For TOS, is it Kirk or Spock? For DS9, is it Sisko, Dax, Kira? Let me know what you think down below. With that, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a thumbs up down below and don't forget to share it. That stuff really helps me out. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do that as well so you won't miss future uploads, and click the bell icon to receive all notifications. If you want to support my work even further, becoming a patron or a member is a great way to do so. Links to those, as well as my social media and merch store, are in the description. That's all I have for this week. Live long and prosper.